Good morning, beloved. Wow, we woke up to a very nasty day today, but it is snowing outside, and goodness, you wouldn't believe the amount of snow up on Mount Fuji. We have got to get up there. I've been hankering to get up there on the snow bike, and I wanted to go up there and show you guys a few old Indian tricks I learned from my granddad about how a man can survive in an austere environment, but I kind of need it to not be raining and snowing up there, so we will get on that. Couple of housekeeping items. One thing that I have really fallen down on and not shown due respect for is towards our members. That's going to be changing from this day forward. We're going to put a lot of importance on that, emphasis on that, and getting stuff to you guys what you deserve. We're going to be doing members-only live streams on the weekends when I'm available, when I could do it. And I've got some exciting things. So brand new badges for all of our long-term members. You may have seen them in the chat. The badge is It's an award. It is something that is unique to our members that have been with us for a long time. Now, when you start, of course, you get the West Coast hat, but we have the two new badges are going to be the 36 month, which are now active, and if you check, you'll see them right next to your name, and that is going to be the dual lantern, the old lantern here that we light, or the single lantern, and then for the 48 month, we have a few of those as well, is the dual lantern. So we're excited about that. I wish I could have one next to my name. I actually was I was dual alternator with you guys, and I forgot to change my credit card, and it didn't update. I was a member of my own channel, and I lost it. So if I want to start over, I have to do it from scratch. Also, 3 new emojis. Emojis are also available for members. I know it's juvenile, but we like it. It's kind of fun. And those are, and maybe some of the middlemen can throw those up there, we have the USFS, and these were all chosen by our members, as well as the lantern and the barefoot, which is kind of gross, but there it is. You guys asked for it, and there you have it. And one last thing with members, on the main channel page, on my home page on YouTube, I put a category up there where I will randomly feature you guys' avatars. So you can see yourself, and I'll rotate those through there as just a little bit of a tip of the hat and acknowledgement to those that have been with me for a long time. Also, I was very excited. My sister came over, and I thought we had lost all of our family photos, and she brought me a massive box, thousands and thousands of photos and negatives, and I've been going through those, and I will start to post those. Those are kind of fun. When I was talking to the Sweet Loaf the other day, and she was asking me if I had any pictures from when I was a child. And I said, you know what, I'm sad to say I don't. I don't even know what happened to those. And a couple days later, as if it was by divine intervention, here they came, and I'll be sharing those as well. So I posted up there kind of a fun, it was really fun to see my very first car, and me standing there I used to drag race. At 16, I cannot believe the child that I was. Amazing. Where's my phone? All right, we'll get going here. Now, if you'd like to participate, you have any questions, comments, everything's on the table. Anything you'd like to get to me, just you can super chat or super sticker, and I will take those. I'm going to open this up right now. Let's see here. All right. Nothing but the highest production here. It's coming in. All right, let's get our lantern going. And I think we have a super chat here and a new member. Goodness, what do we have going on here? Let's see. We have a new member, Tyler. No, that's not a new member. Yeah, Tyler Whirl. Yeah, new member, Tyler Whirl. Shout out to you, Tyler, and thank you. And Jason Barr. Thank you, Jason. It's always good to see you. Looks and sounds great. Yeah, we're going to get it dialed in. Now, I am going to commit to you guys, to the Lord willing, to the best of my ability. We're going to be here or be square at noon Pacific Standard Time. That's West Coast time for the East Coast man, and we're going to be doing these live streams Monday through Friday, and then members only on the weekends. I thought, I don't want to come out here into the shop, all the time, and I don't want to be really tied down to doing a live stream on the weekends. I, like you guys, like to have a couple days off with the family, but what the members told me was, we don't care about high production. We just do it Owen Benjamin style right off the laptop. And I said, well, I can do that. That is going to be easy enough. All right. Let's get our lantern going. It's going to be our tradition. It worked for Mr. Rogers. It works for me. Why the lantern? Well, I just like it. I like the smell of it. It's it reminds me of, see, we've already spilled right there. It just overflowed. We have gas everywhere. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And to the middlemen, I have no information on the on our Signal app, so I don't know why. I don't know why. Some of you ask me about my co-star here. What's the story with the cat? There's a lot of people, you know, I was not a cat person, but this, come here, Mama. Come on, let's introduce you. We'll introduce the co-star here. There's a lot of folks that have been asking about this. This is Mama. She is 18 years old to the best I can tell. Almost 20 years old. She's about the same age as Jack. She came into my life. I didn't ask for a cat, didn't want a cat, but someone had abandoned her, and she came up to my old shop, my Jeep part shop in just out of Portland, hungry and just skinny, and just it was just the saddest thing, you know. And I have a soft heart for animals, so we got some cat food, and I figured, well, what harm is there going to be to have a barn cat, right? Come on, Mom. Oh, flip over, flip over. And so there, that's how she came in. She started. She lived with us. Well, I was quite surprised. When she arrived, she was pregnant as well, and we had 3 kittens right away. She came up missing for a couple days, and then I heard something upstairs, and I went up there, and she had given birth up there and had her 3 kittens, and that was the start of a long relationship. So she's been with me and been a barn cat for a long time, and has killed and hundreds, if not thousands, of mice. She brings them in almost a couple a week, and that really helps to prevent them getting in and destroying things and chewing on wiring. And those mice are a real problem out here. So she earns her keep. I never thought I would be a cat person, but they do kind of grow on you. And, well, I'm the only one that can flip her upside down here and rub her belly, right? Is that right, Mama? Yeah, it's never enough, just never enough. But that is my co-star. We put her up here with her blanket, and she'll be part of the show. So that's just the way that it is. All right, we have a new member, Tyler Whirl. Shout out to you, Tyler. And a super chat from Spartan. You know, your sense of entitlement is off the charts. If you do keep clawing at me, I'm going to push you. See, if I try to take her blanket, like I gave her little blanket here. If I try to take this, or I try to straighten it up sometime, she'll... Here, can I have your blanket? Can I have it? Oh, no, okay, I see. Yeah, all right. You stay over there. I'll pet you later. We have a super chat from Spartan219, and Spartan writes, I've seen a firewood, chainsaw, forest, etc., but do you do any gardening? And if so, do you use compost? And do you use compost, or if you do, how do you make it? Yeah. Well, we put our garden in last year. Oh, I see. We put our garden in last year and just got the fence up, and there's just so much going on. We didn't even plant anything. I built the garden boxes, put the greenhouse in, everything is ready, and we actually put the compost down. I think we put 10 yards of compost down. But yes, we've always done our own compost, and we will start doing it this year. It usually just comes from excess things in the garden. Mrs. W saves everything in the kitchen, and it goes out there. So come this spring, we're going to put a real emphasis on the garden. That's Mrs. W's big thing. So everything is in place. The fence is up. The gates are in. The greenhouse is in. The garden's in. The water system. Everything is ready to go. We just need to plant. So we will be doing that. We'll be doing a lot of that, actually. We'll be probably live streaming from the greenhouse out there while Mrs. W is working. So I don't have the green thumb, and to be honest with you, I don't enjoy gardening. I'd rather go to the dentist, actually. But Mrs. W, it's her thing. So our deal is I build the infrastructure, fences, garden boxes, that sort of thing. I can weed, like that. But when it comes to the gardening part of it, that's going to be her and the sweet loaf. But yeah, we'll be doing a lot of that in the future, just coming this spring. But everything's under 2 feet of snow right now, so there is not much going on. But yeah, we'll share that. I do have to build a composting box for her, and we'll do videos on that as well. But thank you, Spartan. I sure do appreciate it. And welcome, new member, Kanite. Hey, you stay up there. 0017. Shout out to you. Sure are happy to have you here. As well as Lexus Landscape as well. You guys now have access to the new emojis, and Lord willing, cross your fingers, Mrs. W will be joining us for the weekend live stream. Now, we have been putting together kind of a presentation over the last couple months that we've wanted to share with a lot of people. Kind of what comes in often is how did you get where you're at? How did you go from being hand to mouth and, just barely getting by to where you're at now? And it was really interesting. A lot of people will look at me now and say, oh, it must be nice. They're coming in late, but they don't understand that 10, 12 years ago, we were really scrounging to get by. It was pretty rough for us for a while. We actually had to borrow money, some money from my sister as well as my dad to cover a down payment to get into our last homestead because of some poor decisions that we'd made. And it was a pretty rough time. Fast forward to now, it's just incredible how much life can change in the matter of 8-9 years. And what Mrs. W has done is she kind of did a timeline of our ages, where we were at when we were 35, 40, 45, 50, and to share with you kind of the steps that we took and things that we did right and things that we did wrong. And she put a lot into it. It is kind of nice. And she did it for me, but I asked her, could we share this? I think this would be kind of interesting and helpful to give people encouragement. Because what you'll find, a lot of you will be 10 years ahead of us. And by the time you're 50, you could be so far beyond what we're doing. If that's what you choose to do, it's possible. But I found encouragement when I saw it, and I thought we might share that with you guys. We have a super chat from Mr. Dean Pickett and single alternator member, let's not get carried away here, who says, lunchtime live streams with Wranglerstar, looking forward to it. Yep, lunchtime, I think that's going to work out good for us. We're going to do lunchtime live streams. 12 o'clock works good for me. That gives me time in the morning to spend with my family. And then we can jump into this, and then it also gives a little enough extra time that we can do additional content after that. So we'll see, but I think it seems to be working out pretty good. But thank you, Dean. I really do appreciate you supporting us and your faithfulness. Also, Mr. Jason Barr. Shout out to you, Jason. And Jason writes, there is an old song named "My Dog a Democrat." I swear my cat is a Republican. I don't know about that song. It says that I don't know. I don't really have any context right here, but I'll have to look that up. Maybe one of the middlemen can put up a link right there, and we can all enjoy that. I'm sure it's a banger. But thank you, Jason. Shout out to you. I really appreciate that. Oh, we have a very generous super chat from Mr. Skylar Pierce. Shout out to you, Skylar. Thank you for your generosity. A new member, he says, guys, don't forget to hit the thumbs up. Let's support. Yeah, don't forget to hit that thumbs up. We're building this plane how's it go? We're building it as we're flying it. Who knows where it's going to go? But I've really been looking forward to it and enjoyed it. I didn't know. It made me pretty nervous, the thought of live streaming. It's kind of terrifying to do, but I think, well, what are we going to talk about? And typically, whenever I try to script something or prepare anything, it just seems to fall flat. I think the best way to go is just keep it fresh, and we'll just you guys can kind of direct the conversation where you'd like to see it go, and we're here to support one another and just enjoy the company. Just have what do you call it? I don't know. Mr. Jason Barr, shout out to you. Jason says, I got it already. I got too many things going on here. Sorry about that. Okay, we need to get our lantern going. Goodness. Sometimes I get ranting and I don't even get my lantern lit. Sometimes I'm a little reluctant to start this thing because I've had some near-death experiences with it. All right. What's the chance of this catching on fire? I don't remember having near as many problems with the white gas lanterns. I think the white gas was a little bit, maybe had a higher flash point, or was a little bit cleaner burning. I'm just burning 91 unleaded in here, premium, non-ethanol, of course, but it still scares me. Here we go. It's very delicate, this. This thing's got my goat, I'll tell you. The irony of it becoming the 36 and 48 month. See, this is bad when it doesn't light and it takes so long. Okay, this is hard on the heart. Cat doesn't seem to mind. Okay. We have a new member, Supreme Science. Shout out to you. Membership is going to have its privileges. I am on day 8 of my cold shower routine. This morning was fabulous. And this morning I started the 10-week Wim Hof, I don't know what you call it, program, where he combines, it was the first day that I did it today. And man, we know what's so interesting about this is I've always, yoga and all that stuff, I'm like, I don't want anything to do with that. I don't like the spiritual aspect of it. But I have a lot of friends that are, like top tier extreme athletes, and that's how they keep their bodies in good condition. And I look at these guys and like, man, they do look pretty good for their age. There must be something to it. And what I like about, did that go? Oh no. You see, now we really have a problem. The flame went out. The chamber is full of gas fumes, and this is my worst fear. This is when the explosion happens. Oh, goodness. Oh, goodness. We might have to switch to propane. It's just not the same, though, is it? Oh, that was the way it was. That's the way you do it. Look at that. That's perfect. Okay, I think we're good to go now. So I didn't really know what it was about, so I went and signed up for it, and I opened it up today. It's 33 minutes, and it was actually quite nice. It starts with the breathing exercises, which the benefits of that are just incredible, and just some basic stretching and just kind of get your body moving and working. And you just don't realize how stiff and how I guess how you can lose flexibility. And if you just do the same thing all the time, whether you're working at an office or you're a truck driver where you're just you're not getting a lot of variety, your body will just kind of mold into that shape. And if you don't make an effort of keeping yourself stretched out and flexible, I'm really convinced that is something that just degrades your life and just makes, I think we just get old too soon just for lack of attention. And so this was really great. I enjoyed doing it. It was very simple. I didn't feel like I was overexerting myself. And afterwards, just the feeling and then jump into that cold shower, goodness, it's absolutely amazing. I was thinking, I'm so excited about this. When you find something that works so well, that's giving you so many benefits, I want to share it. But I don't know how I would go about doing that. So what I was going to ask the members is, maybe we just put up a camera, we just do a stream, and you guys can jump in and follow along. I just started. Would you be interested in doing that with me? It's very simple. I don't want to, I know that he's developed this program and he should get paid for it, and I don't want to step on any toes or anything like that. I would definitely want to point you to him, and if you had benefits, I think you should support what he's doing over there. I don't want to take credit for it. But man, I think it's so important. Sometimes, the Christian church and it really focuses on the spiritual side of things and and studying and knowing God's word and all that. And it seems that the other half of it, which is just as important, taking care of the vessel, taking care of the body, trying to learn how to eat clean and drink pure water, those things. I think that's the other half. And I just don't know if you can really be effective at the spiritual side if your body's not working properly. And the testimonials that you see are just incredible. So let me know, contact me, let me know on that. That might be, that's a little bit strange, and I'm not the fitness channel or anything, but we could probably do it if we just kept it members. But if you'd be interested in doing that, we could start right from the beginning. We could put them up there, and I would encourage you to do that, to do it. I'm on day 8, and It's amazing. The energy level that I have, just before we get into it, I just want to say yesterday, I've had a lot of trouble sleeping for some reason for the last 2 weeks, and I just don't know what it is. I've always slept really well, and the night before last, I think I got maybe an hour with the sleep. And when I got up, I just felt terrible. I was just thinking, I don't even know how I'm going to function today. When I don't get sleep like that, it's just hard to work. It's hard to be patient with your children. I mean, it's just rough. You guys have experienced that before. And I don't know if it's if this is a spiritual battle that's going on, but man, it was rough. I'll tell you what, I went through that. I did my cold shower and went through the Wim Hof breathing method, and I had more energy than I usually have. And I just can't explain it. Even with an hour and a half sleep. And about 9 o'clock last night, I was just, the Sweet Loaf and I, we do tea time every night. We have the teapot and all that, and it's a little ritual that we do, and I read her story. And I usually put her to bed every night. After tea time, I just fell asleep in my chair. I was done and slept like a baby. So I don't know, man. Things are changing. Maybe it's just a detoxification. Maybe that your body, when it's neglected and you don't really see to your diet, you get to the point where you just become so toxic that it might take a couple weeks for it to expel everything. And I've just noticed that. My sense of smell is super, super keen. There are things that I can smell now that I haven't been able to smell for it's remarkable. It's absolutely remarkable. All right, let's jump in and take care of our super chats here and get this show started. We have a super chat from the Sanguine Man, and he writes, "Thanks for doing what you do, Cody. We loved your channel for a while now. It's also barn cats are the best. Barn cats are the best. Yeah, they are." This one's high maintenance, and it gives me no peace when I'm working. The poor thing. When I first put the wood stove in, I had it going like that. I didn't have the fans on top there. And I was sitting, splitting some kindling, and she's on the bench. She always tries to get close to me. She jumped right on top of it, and jumped right on and jumped right off. Didn't take her long to figure out that was hot. She hasn't done it since, but barn cats are good. Supreme Science, new member, welcome. Shout out to you. A Cut Above Knife Sharpening member, Single Lantern, thanks for being an idol to look up to and take inspiration from. I am certainly not an idol. We don't want to go down that road. I'm a fellow brethren. Not better, not worse. We're all on the same page. We're just all on the same journey. The way I look, the beautiful analogy is that road to God is like a ladder, and all of us are on the ladder. Some of us higher rungs than the other, but it's easy to fall down as well. But I'm uncomfortable with that word. If you knew what I knew about myself, you would not be putting me on a pedestal. I mean, I suffer from the same issues you guys do. This is a struggle, and we're just here doing the best we can. We're just here to help each other out. But thank you. I really appreciate that support. We have a super chat from WRC, and double alternator member, shout out to you, who writes, "Day one of the cold shower. I'm proud of you for doing that." I'll tell you, you may think to yourself, unless you're tougher than I am, which is probably the case, you think, whoa, cold shower, how hard can that be? I probably did that years ago or once in a while. It's really hard. It's really hard when you get in it. As I said, it took me an hour to jump in there. But even now, so day 8 was this morning. And I was thinking by day 8, like, oh, I'm just going to run in there. It's going to be no problem. I'm just going to relish it. Yes, I do look forward to it. But I'll tell you, that 3-4 minutes, when you turn it on there and you're kind of looking at it to jump in there, it ain't easy. It is so unnatural, and it's very, very shocking. What I do that is very helpful is you get the water kind of what I would say tepid. Not hot, not cold, kind of lukewarm, and you jump right in there. You jump in there with the lukewarm. It's not shocking, I'd say exhilarating, and then as soon as you get in there, you flip it to the right. You go full full cold, and then you start hyperventilating. And I do this. I do this little. I spin around and spin around. I do this little jiggle. It's so hard. My hands get numb. My neck gets numb. I can only stand it on my head for so long. I can't stand it on my hands for very long either. My hands just immediately go numb because our source water is cold, man. Goodness, it's cold up here. And but I keep my hands out of it, and I roll around. I just go for it, man. I got it. 3 minutes. I'm all over it. It's excellent. I come out of my master bedroom like a man possessed. I have the energy of a demon. We have a super chat from Mr. Josh Connor and Double Lantern member. You are the elite. Shout out to you, Josh, and thank you for your years of support. That's awesome. He says, sorry to see that your bed grounding didn't work out. I've seen ads for grounding sheets. Are you going to try those? It's unlikely that I would. I'm not going to say no, but I'd have to look into that. I am very, very particular about fabrics, about what they're made out of. That's something that I've developed a real, maybe I'm insane. It could be a mental issue. Maybe I'm crazy. But I started to develop, even before I felt like I needed to take my shoes off, I started to develop a real dislike for synthetic fabrics on my skin. I grew up wearing like Patagonia polypropylene base layer. I'll take my shoes off here. I lived in that from the time I was 16. I've always worked outside, and there's nothing like that stuff. That polypropylene is so super warm and just good insulating. And then I got, just maybe a year or two ago, I got to the point where man, something bugs me about it. It doesn't feel right. All that stuff, fleece, all those synthetics, everything that's just made out of oil. And then I looked into it a little bit. One thing that was, I'll back up a little bit. One thing I found to be very curious in the Old Testament was the law of Moses. When they were setting up the tabernacle, God gave very specific instructions about how the priestly garments were to be made. Now, if you don't know how it worked, there was the 12 tribes of Israel, and they're all in the desert, and they're all camped around. And one of the tribes was set aside, of Benjamin, that was the priest class. And what was different about the tribe of Benjamin was that they were not allowed to be able to have any land as a possession. All of the other tribes were given specific areas of land, a heritage that was to be handed down from generation to generation, except for the tribe of Benjamin. And they were set aside to be the priesthood, the priestly class. And they had built a temporary tabernacle there, for lack of a better word, which was a big fence, kind of a fenced-in area with a tent. And in that tent it was divided into two sections. So the inner tent were the instruments for the atoning of sins. There was the ladles and the shewbread and the candelabras, and then there was a veil, and behind that was the Ark of the Covenant. Now we've seen representations of the Ark of the Covenant on Indiana Jones, and it was similar to that. It had the lid, and then it had the covering cherubim over the top, and between those angels resided the Shekinah, the actual presence of God. Now, it was forbidden for anyone to go in that area except for one time a year, and that was only the chief priest. So, for this tribe of Benjamin, there was very specific instructions. And what this tabernacle was basically an antitype or a type of what the ultimate, the Temple of Solomon would be, which would be ultimately, lead to Christ, which would become that. And in that, the instructions for the vestments and the outfits of these priests, God gave very specific instructions of types of fabric, and it was I forget, it was linen and different things, but it had to be done a certain way, and they had to be made a certain way. And I always thought that was somewhat arbitrary and a little bit strange. It didn't make any sense to me. I thought, well, who can know these old things? Well, now with science, we can see that there are certain fabrics that resonate or have certain frequencies that are more in tune with the human body. And if memory serves, organic cotton has the same resonant factor or the same frequency, I don't know all the verbiage, as the human body. We all have certain frequency that everything operates on. So, and that's funny that we found that out, because I have felt personally that's what I'm most comfortable in. I never told anyone about this, but I was moved to that. I got rid of all those synthetics. Something was just off. I just didn't feel like, I almost felt like it was zapping my energy, or it just wasn't, it's hard to nail down. And I had a friend a good friend of mine who actually brought up the same thing. And I said, he said something about fabrics. I said, what? You know, I wasn't going to tell anyone. I thought everybody would think I was crazy. Well, he had come to the same revelation, and he'd done the same thing. And I said, well, you know, I've kind of noticed that as well. And he said, oh yeah, he was a contractor. He said, if I wear synthetics or anything that's not like cotton, organic cotton is even better than regular cotton, or wool or linen, I'm not as strong. You know, and I thought, that's a little bit weird. I don't know if I was ready to go that far. I mean, I definitely felt I didn't like it, but I didn't know about that. But I believe that that's the truth. I think there is something to that. So I don't know. I can't explain it. So I'm really particular about fabrics like that. Most of those things that you buy, like gimmicky things, you know, sheets or comforters that ground, you know, what are those things made out of? What type of material? You know, that I don't know that that's going to work for me. Yeah, I'm doing everything in my power to, I guess, to establish the fact that I am losing my mind. It could be, but we're having a good time here. We have a super chat from Luke, Overton Windex. Shout out to you, Luke, who says, do you believe in God? And if so, can you give advice? Or from, I'm sorry, Crazy Razor. Crazy Razor, do you believe in God? And if so, can I give us? Yes, I do, 100%. I never didn't believe in God. Now, I didn't always follow him. And the Bible says if you train your children up in the way, or if you teach them from a young age about God, about the gospel, it is unlikely that they will depart. It's a lot more likely that they'll be able to establish a relationship with God. And that is very, very true. That was true for me. Even though I was raised with it from the time I was little, and that was somewhat, I mean, it wasn't really, you know, religion was kind of a funny thing. It was so funny to be in that Christian cult that I grew up in. You would think that it was like super orthodox and lots of rules and lots of Bible and all that, but there wasn't anything like that. It was so strange. It was like the Amish in the way that we were isolated, but we had a couple of really bizarre, strange beliefs. One of them was we were not allowed to ever go to the hospital. That was absolutely forbidden. And when you say that now, you think, well, if someone told me not to go to the hospital, I would tell them to go pound sand. But what you don't understand is when you are raised in a closed community like that, and it's all you've ever known, and it's fear-based, it's just not anything that you even consider doing. And what's so strange when I look back on now of how many, there was some horrible injuries and things that people had to suffer through because of lack of medical attention, and myself included. I broke my collarbone on a mountain bike wreck. It was almost compound fracture, a really bad one. And I was in a remote area, and I was by myself. And I had to walk out with that broken collarbone about six or 7 miles with my bike. And I got out to the highway, and I stashed my bike in some bushes. And then I stood there on the side of the road, agonizing pain, at a hitchhike to go up and get my truck, which was about 15 miles up the mountain. Well, I got a ride, but not all the way, about halfway, and the guy was turning off, and he let me off, and so then I had to hitchhike again up the rest of the way. Then I got in my truck and drove it down, retrieved my bike, drove home an hour. It was difficult not to pass out and drive. You know, just the pain was excruciating, especially with the bones grating. It was a rough deal, but it was never in my mind. It wasn't even an option to go to a hospital. It was something that was it was forbidden. I was probably 18 or 19, I don't know, somewhere around there. Got home, I went to my parents' house, and they called the elders over. You know, the elders have no medical attention. I mean, they didn't have anything other than, there was no doctors or anything like that. And they came over, and they brought a hospital bed that would lift up and put it in the living room, and a piece of shelving, I think a piece of melamine shelving, that they laid on the back, and they laid me on it, and all the men got behind, grabbed my shoulders and pulled my arms back, and they were kind of trying to push and get that collarbone line back up. No anesthetic, no painkillers, no medication, it was just bite the leather type of thing. They no more and got that on there, and it popped out again, and I just about passed out from the pain. Finally, someone came with some sort of like a strap deal, and they strapped it around my shoulders and pulled my shoulders back and tied me back to that board, and there I sat in that hospital bed for, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks. I remember just thinking that how much I would give to be able to just move, to be able to roll over on my side or something, but that's what I had to deal with. That was just common for anyone that got hurt. I had lots of friends that died, motorcycle accidents and different things that who knows, but I think probably could have been prevented. But we just didn't know any better. It was just the way that it was. My first cousin, a lot of the young girls died giving childbirth. That was common. There were no hospitals, just maybe some of the women were midwives. One of the saddest situations was my first cousin that I was really close to. It was very much like my sister, just a couple years older than me. She got married to a friend of mine, and she suffered like through 36 hours of labor, and ultimately died in the process, just needlessly. And but that was the world that I grew up in, and that was just how it was. Crazy. Now, now that I look back on it and think about it, it's just insane. And you know what was so ridiculous was how they justified that stance. Somebody at some time, some preacher or someone there had read the Bible and the words of Jesus, and he said, "Physician," where they come across the words, "Physician, heal thyself," and they took that so literally. They took it literally to mean that we should heal ourselves and pray for one another and have nothing to do with the medical establishment, that was the enemy. Years later I went back there and reread that, and you would have to have the understanding of a child to take that scripture and apply it in that way. It just astonished me, the ignorance of and the lack of understanding that you would build an entire theology on top of that. And how it's shocking. It's just shocking to me. But that's the way it was. We have a super chat from a Cut Above Knife Sharpening. Shout out to you and 3-year member. Appreciate that. Thank you for your support. He also, and another super chat. Thank you. That's very generous of you. He writes, "Thanks for being an idol and being an inspiration. You, one of the big reasons I started my own business, sharpening and making knives. Thank you, Cody." Let's not use that word idol, gentlemen. I'm very uncomfortable with that, but I really do appreciate that. Yeah, that's a great business. I have recommended that. And just if you're a retired guy, or even a young kid, you want to make a few bucks, you could invest $500 or so, get yourself a good knife sharpener, some media and stuff, and just go out and start doing that. You can set up at trade shows. You can set up a little table. I know that if I was at a place and a young, enterprising young man was doing that, and he'd sharpen my knife for $5, $10, whatever it was, I'd be happy to do that. I think that's wonderful. Hang a shingle and get after it. We have a super chat from the Knight 0017. Shout out to you. And he says, "Just got my first pair of Nick's boots. I went with the Falcons. I've been coveting them for years, ever since your Nick's boots video." I love my Nick's boots. That's my go-to. I have 3 pair. These are my heavy-duty ones. These are Nick's Hot Shots. If you want to watch kind of an interesting video, the good folks at Nick's invited Mrs. W and I up to come up to the factory, and they built these boots for me. And we got to go behind the scenes, and it was so interesting. We got to see, I learned so much that I didn't know about boots. They started with how the leather was cut. And they had a big table there, and I've got all this on video. If you go and search on my channel under Nick's Boots, and maybe one of the middlemen can throw a link up there if that might be helpful to folks. What was so interesting is they had just premium, the best of the best cowhide, and they laid it out on a sheet, on a big table. And they showed me how important it was where they cut different portions of the leather for different areas, that there's some that's better for different things. And one thing that I didn't realize, that in the leather, and just like skin, there would be, you could see, I don't know if it was veins or arteries, I think it was blood veins, and those were spots, they pointed it out to me, those were spots of weakness. And they would never, when they were cutting out the pattern for the pieces, they would never put that on an area where there's going to be, where it's going to flex, because that's a weak spot, and that can break. And they would cut around those and leave all those. And it was, I started to see why it was so expensive for custom pair of boots, because of the effort that went into it. Everything is handmade. And then from there, you know, we went to each stage, from the big industrial stitching to putting the eyelets in, and the vibram soles and the screw. From the whole process, it was so interesting. Now, I don't know if Nick's is doing this anymore. This is kind of a thing that's went out of the way, because people just don't demand it anymore, and there was just not enough interest of true custom boots. Now, they may, you'd have to call them and ask them, but when I was there, they actually did a custom boot. Most people don't need a custom boot. Most people can fit in a stock boot. They have a pretty good, if you want to buy some, if you go to their website, they have a pretty good video and instructions on how you measure at home, and they can get you really a good fitment. I myself have got some problems, because I used to race BMX, and I had a bad accident where I damaged my foot, and I've got a big bump that sticks out on the side where the bones above my instep, where it broke it. And again, I broke my foot, BMX bike racing, and then I came home, and then the elders came over and they didn't set it right. Just like they didn't set my shoulder right. So now my shoulder is low here, and when I get dress shirts and stuff, I have to have them altered because my arms are different length, you know, it just messed me all up. But so I got a busted up foot too, that I cannot wear normal boots like that, because I have a big bone that sticks out and a weird toe thing going on. So what they did is they built what they call a custom last. Now, a last is they'll take either wood or plastic representation of your foot. It kind of looks like a foot, you know, a little bit rounder, and then they start building up little sections of leather and material to make it exactly like your foot. And it was really interesting to watch. And the guy that did it was incredibly talented. And any issues or weird toe lengths you have, or just things that aren't normal, they build that, and they basically build this wooden last that is a exact representation of your foot. And in the back room, they had rows and rows of these little cubby holes of customers' lasts. So when your last is made, and this is the way the cobblers would have done it back in the day, when the lasts were made for you, you would call your cobbler when you needed shoes, and you would never have to go in, and he would pull your last out, and they actually build the boot around it. So you just get a boot that fits perfectly, custom made for you. And there are still some companies out there that do that, just not a lot of them. But what it makes, when you look at the price of the boots and you realize what goes into them, the reason why they're $600-700 for custom boots is because everything is handmade, and there's a lot of work that goes into it. So I have these. These are my smoke jumpers, or hot shots. These are hot shots, I believe. Nick's hot shots. These are wildland firefighting boots, 8-inch boots. No metal in them. That's what's unique about a wildland boot. You may see some screws in the bottom. There's little screws in there to help hold the vibram sole in addition to the stitching. But all of these soles are all heat resistant, fireproof. All the stitching is heat resistant, fireproof, even the glue and all of that. But there is no metal in them apart from those little screws, which make no difference. And the reason why, I learned the hard way on my first fire. I was told when I went on my first fire that I needed to have specific boots, special boots made for wildland firefighting. Well, I had a nice pair of boots that I had from construction, because I've always worn nice shoes that were made by Wesco in Oregon, just outside of Portland. But they were made for construction. They're construction boots. They looked the same, very similar, but on the inside, they have what they call a shank right here. They have a steel shank. Boots, they'll put a steel shank in there, because if you step on a nail or anything sharp like that, it protects your foot, anything from puncturing it. Well, the problem with that heavy metal shank in there is that on the fire ground, the ground is very hot. And after a few hours, that steel starts to heat up in there and it becomes miserable. It just starts to bake your feet. My feet would be burning and get so hot that I'd have to stand in buckets of water, and then I had wet feet. It was miserable. It was a really miserable experience. And the first thing I did when I got my paycheck for the fire was when I went and bought a set of White's boots. Had custom boots made, and instead of the steel shank in there, there's a triple layer of leather. So it still gives you that protection from penetrating, but it won't heat up. The second pair of boots I have are Nick's, the Urban Logger. You can go on their website, see the Urban Logger, and that's what I wear most of the time. And that's a 6-inch boot. It's a little bit quicker to lace up, and I have it in a brown cowhide and with a lug sole on it, very similar to this. But it's a lighter duty, because this is an awfully heavy boot to deal with on a daily basis if you don't need it. If you're not like in an extreme environment like wildland firefighting, it's a bit much. So for most guys, that Urban Logger is a good boot because it's got the 6-inch. You still get the good Vibram sole. It looks just the same, but not so heavy, and the break-in process is a lot quicker and a lot easier. And I have those in brown. And then the third pair, I have a pair of 4-inch, which are basically just the high shoe. And I have those in a Horween, and that's what I use they're more for dress. But that's the only shoes that I really have, apart from I have a pair of tennis shoes for my one wheel. But I got rid of all that stuff, and when I buy clothing, I'm gonna have a lot less, but just high quality. I want to know where it comes from. I want stuff that's made by people that are being paid a living wage. I don't feel comfortable. I'm not going to demand cheap prices on things because that comes at the expense of people. Those sweatshops and children involved in sewing things. It just doesn't seem right to me, and I just don't support it. I was like that before too. I understood. As Americans, we just demand everything. Demand everything's got to be cheap, and whenever anything is like really expensive, like, oh, that's stupid. I could go get blah 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 whatever for half the price, or I can go get boots at Walmart. Yes, you can. I understand that, but when are we not accountable for our actions if we support something? Even if we're not over there chaining kids to sewing machines, but if that's what we're buying and the products we are somewhat supporting that. And I think we have a responsibility. If you can find, it's not always possible, but if you can find a small company that's making things and they're paying people a wage that they can support their family, and they're trying to use supplies or ingredients or materials that are high quality, they're not going to be full of poisons or formaldehydes and all of this garbage that comes from overseas, I think we have a responsibility to do it. And if if you could just whittle down everything, do we need any more than a couple pair of boots? I'd really be content with just having two, a good heavy pair of work boots, and then something that I could wear that would be a little bit lighter, more casual. I would be content with that. And the only reason I have 3 pairs is because Nick's supported us when we were a really small channel, and we've had a relationship with them, and they said, hey, we would like to build you a couple pair of boots. That's why I have more than 1 pair. But go over to Nick's. They're good people over there, and they make a fine product. Beautiful boots. We have a super chat from Adult Small Bear. Shout out to you, who writes, how did the grounding your mattress work out? Well, it didn't work out at all. As I said yesterday, I roll around in my bed. It got so bad years ago. Mrs. W and I, of course, we tried to share a blanket, a comforter, and like most people do, and it was just not happening. Poor Mrs. W would wake up, and I had rolled all of it off of her and had stolen it all, and she's out there in the cold. And so right away, we realized that was not going to work. So what we did is we have our own separate blankets. We sleep in the same bed, obviously, But I have my own comforter, and she has her own comforter, and which is kind of nice because then you can choose the weight you want. You know, because I like a weight a little bit different than hers, and we have one for summer and one for winter, and that way we don't. I don't steal the blankets from her anymore. So I do move a lot. So you watched the video. I put it down there and plugged it in. Like, all right, here we go. Let's go see what happens. Well, it was maybe an hour or so that the tape started coming loose. And that metal tape is sharp. You know, it's like real metal. And when you crease it and when it tears, it gets sharp. And man, stuff was jabbing me and poking me. And then it came, the adhesive came off the sheet, and it was sticking all over me. And I got up and was trying to press it back down. And I finally, after battling with it for half the night, I tore it off and threw it all in the trash. That's it. So I don't know. I can't add any more to that. Creamy S. Brianna, new member. Shout out to you. Welcome. We'll see you over on the members only super chat. And Harry. Shout out to you as well, Harry. Welcome. We have a super chat from Madrox 303 and triple Loctite member. Shout out to you. He says, how's the weather in the Pacific Northwest? In Albuquerque, low in Denver, and we are 14 inches so far. Looking forward to the daily live streams. Yes, so the weather, so the freezing level's dropping down. It's going to be down to about 1,000 feet. It's actually snowing right now, snowing really, really hard. It was 33 degrees when I started the stream, and snow is piling up. It's been miserable. The weather's been terrible the last couple of weeks, where it's just, the snow level is just hovering like 500 feet, 1,500 feet right above where we're at, so all we get is rain. But goodness, the snow that is stacking up on the mountain is incredible. I'm just waiting for a clear day so we can get up there, and I'll take you guys up there. I'm trying to find some areas. Cell service is getting better and better. What would be super fun is if I could get, I've got a live stream set up that I could go mobile. We could clamp onto that, and I could take you up there and show you some of that amazing country up there in real time. We'll see. I think that so I don't know if I shared this with you or not. I was up there, maybe I did. I was up there about a week and a half ago with my neighbor, my buddy David, and he called me up and said, hey, let's go up. The storm was coming in. Let's take the bikes up there and test out our gear. Let's see how we're doing. Anyway, we got up there, way up there, and we're about 8,000 feet. And we were actually on our way down. And I just replaced my phone. I got the new phone. This is a new iPhone 14. And the iPhone 14 has the ability to make satellite phone calls for emergencies. Not regular calls. It's not a sat phone. But in an emergency, they claimed that would work, that you could contact the satellite when there is no cell coverage. Well, we're really, really deep up there. There's no cell coverage where we were at. We were coming down, and I hit a stump that was underneath the snow, and I went over the handle, really wiped out pretty bad, went over the handlebars and wadded up there in front of it. Well, I was getting up and dusted myself off, and I had my phone in my pocket here of my snowsuit. And that, you know that sound it makes when you butt dial 911, that alarm sounds like, oh, you got to get that thing off. It was doing that, and I pulled it out, and it had sensed that I'd been in a crash, and it had automatically dialed all my emergency contacts. So it dialed my sister, and it dialed Mrs. W, and it dialed the local sheriff, search and rescue. So all of a sudden, all these phone calls and texts started coming in. Are you okay? What happened? They just got notified that I had been in a car crash. But I'd crashed my snow bike up there. But the amazing thing about that is that had called up by satellite. Again, no cell coverage up there. You're on your own out there. And within just 30 seconds, I was receiving calls from loved ones, from emergency contacts. Well, when my buddy David saw that, he was pretty impressed, and he went home and ordered one immediately after that. So that's amazing technology. That's something I've been really concerned about, is not having the ability to communicate your location, because we spend so much time up in the wilderness in those remote locations that are it's so dangerous up there. If you get into trouble, who knows? You kind of have to get yourself out. But that's a very comforting feature to have. So I think it's only a matter of time in the next couple of years or so where the cell phones are going to have the ability to stay connected everywhere. And once that happens, that's really going to open up the world. I'll be able to share the things that I really enjoy doing and what we do up there and the great adventures that we have, to be able to go up there and to live stream, next to these alpine lakes, and it's just going to be amazing. It frees up, takes all the tethers off of having to be attached to a particular place, and you can really share stuff. It's going to be fun. I think it's going to happen pretty quick. We have a super chat from, I got it already. Put my glasses on here. Goodness, we have a pink one. Pink ones are always good. We have a super chat from Skylar Pierce. Shout out to you, Skylar. And Skylar writes, "Hey, Cody, really enjoy the prepper content. Can you talk on the topic of survival apocalypse radios and what you have on hand?" Yeah, what I have on hand, and so what we decided to do was, I was initially thinking, well, we'll go with the Super Skookum, something that's going to be really durable, like a Motorola phone, something that we've had or used with the fire service that have been proven and really tough. And I got to looking into them, and yeah, they're available and they're really, really nice, but they're also very expensive. You're talking $800 and up to really get into one of those nice radios. And that's cool if you're really into it and that's your thing. I'm not one to say anything about that. I totally get it. I think that's awesome. But we also understood that we have a small, our small group of guys up here that we call them the war band, that we try to keep it, a group together, and everyone needs to be on the same page, and everyone needs to have the same equipment. So I've had the guys over here, and what I did when I initially started for preparations is I contacted all the guys that I felt that were solid, reliable, on the same page, that were trustworthy, that I've known for some time, know their families, and I had their families all come over. And the men met out at the shop, and the ladies met in with Mrs. W. And I started. I didn't really know what to do or how to start the meeting, but I understood that community is very important, and that really came home for me the other night when I shared that story yesterday, where I came home and there was a strange car and someone in my house. Because we had made the preparations and reached out and started building community, I had the ability to call someone that was close by that could come over and give me some backup to help me. And that was really awesome. That was really the first time that I ever needed to lean on one of these guys for help, and it worked perfectly. So what we did was, I said, what I want you guys to do is to bring all your stuff, everything you have, and that's rifles, sidearms, any tactical gear, body armor, night vision, any of that sort of thing that you've put together individually. And let's lay it all out. Let's see what we got. Let's see what we're working with here. So that if need be, with a group text, we could have 7 guys that are with a go bag, that are kitted out, ready to deal with whatever happens. Whatever happens. It could be one of our kids has wandered off on a sledding trip, and we haven't seen him for 2 hours and it's getting dark. How nice would it be to have something in place where you could call and lean on these guys, where they could come and that they understand what's going on, that they're not just, what do I do? They know they've got their flashlights, they've got their headlamps, they've got their cold weather gear, it doesn't have to be the best or super, just at least they've got it. We've talked about it. We have a plan to deal with difficult situations. Could be a house fire, could be a million different things. It could be just like me the other night, where there was someone, I thought there was a stranger in my house. So all the guys came over, and we laid everything out to see what we had. And what I wanted to do was to make sure that things were consistent, that we all kind of had the similar things. And some guys had more and some guys had less. And basically what we did is we just pooled everything together. I had a bunch of extra holsters. I had some, an extra weapons light and this and that. And if someone didn't have something, we made sure that he had it. And if there was a deficiency in any way, we ordered it and made it happen. Some guys had a little extra money, had some disposable income. Some guys had some extra gear, and we got it so that everyone had the basics of what they needed. Not everyone got the best stuff. You know, some guys have steel armor and some guys have ceramics, but at least they have something and consistency. So I kind of came up with, I think we should have the minimum equipment list. This is what you should have for a rifle. It needs to have a light. Probably should have an optic on it. Should have a sling on it. You should have this many magazines, so on and so forth. So that if you were with your buddies and you went into his bag or needed to go into his bag, you would know he would at least have this minimum standard that we're all going to have and all be on the same page. So once that was kind of all established, and also, you know, what are you going to wear? And do you have cold weather gear? And we decided on, you know, let's just pick a color if you're going to be buying stuff. If you're going to be buying pants or jackets or cold weather gear, anything like that, we just decided everything's going to be the same. So we're either be multicam or Ranger green. So don't order exotics or anything. We want to look somewhat cohesive and somewhat professional, if need be. If you needed to set up a roadblock or you needed to, I don't know. I don't know all the situations, but that's what I did. Now, when it came to radios, not everyone could afford to buy a $700, $800 Motorola. So we settled on the Baofangs. He's got his radio license, and he's programmed radios for all my guys. We bought the programming cable, and we've programmed lots and lots of them for the local community. So I just tell the guys, just go get the Baofang, get a couple of them. They're about 50, 60 bucks. They bring them over. Jiraiya programs them for them, so we're all on the same page. We all have the same frequencies, and that's what we went with. That's what we go with. And then I know they're not the best, but they're better than not having anything, and we're all on the same page. Then just to supplement that, I have a little 3-pack of Baofangs. I've got a video on it in a little red case that I can hand out. And I take those with me all the time. I even take them snow biking, and many times we'll get a guy that will join our group that's not up to speed or doesn't have the frequency or doesn't even have a radio, and that's been very, very handy. I just pass those things out. 40, 50 bucks for a radio. You know, if it gets lost, it's not that big of a deal. But it's all programmed, ready to go. I throw it in his pack, then he's set. So that's what we've done for communications. You know, it's not the best, it's not the most sophisticated. It's just what I could do and just what worked for us. And I would just encourage you to do something similar to that. The most important thing is community, and that's the most difficult thing that I hear from people is, yeah, I've got the message. I understand the importance of this, but I can't find anyone like-minded. I can't find anyone like you're talking about to do this with me. And the sad reality is the closer you're into the city and the more people you have around you, it's more difficult to get people that want to open up and want to participate in this. Where in the rural areas, people are a lot friendlier, and you just rely upon each other a lot more. I think one of the things that happens in the rural communities is what we all understand is that we need each other up here. We can't just be an island. We can't just rely upon emergency services to save us. We're going to have to help each other. You know, what happens every year up here is, God bless the search and rescue guys. It's a volunteer organization, and they do a lot of good work up here. But they don't have the specific skill set that some of the local guys here, or just the knowledge of topography, because there's so much snowmobiling and mountaineering and extreme sports type of folks around here that spend a lot of time on the mountain. Guys are rigged up and set up for that. And what ends up happening, what's happened in the last couple years, there's been a couple kids that have gotten lost, separated from their families. One of the boys that's a friend of Jack was up backcountry skiing and got up there and didn't have any clothes, and it got dark, and he got kind of turned around and almost died up there. And when we called search and rescue, because of this, it was storming and it was below zero up there, it was extreme. This boy fortunately had a Garmin Connect or InReach, and he was texting with his mother, but he was dying up there. He was dying from exposure. And when search and rescue was called, they said, you know, there's nothing we can do. It's too dangerous for us to go up there. The local men got together in the community, some snowmobilers and some of the pillars of the community up here, and at the risk of their personal lives, put on their cold weather gear, and they went up there and they saved that boy's life. And if it hadn't have been for the local community and the local Facebook page and the community coming together, that boy would have lost his life. I'm convinced of it. So community is very, very important. That's why it's important if you have the ability to get out of the cities. The cities are going to become more and more dangerous. It's just not a good environment to be in. We were never intended to be packed into cities like that and live like that, and it's horrible. If you will find that it's easier to get these groups together if you are in the rural areas. But you do have to put yourself out there, and you have to make an effort. Just get out there and get involved, find out where people are meeting. Is someone doing something at the local hall? Get connected to the local Facebook page. Put yourself out there, start meeting people, and you'll find like-minded folks. And you just have to put an effort into it. And once you get 2 or 3 guys together, then word gets out, and it won't take long, and you'll build that group. It's going to be the most important thing in the future is community, looking after each other and covering each other's backs. We have a super chat from Creamy's Brianna, who writes, there are support groups for those who left or forced put out of that organization. Are you talking about like Christian cult? Yeah, they're probably support groups. I don't need a support group. I'm not willing to go there. I'll deal with my own demons on that. But I know if that works for you, there is. The problem with a lot of those support groups not with a lot of them. What do I know about support groups? The support group that formed from ex-followers of the church that I grew up in, I don't know that they support one another more than sit around and bitch all day. And that's just something I just don't have time for. I focus on the good aspects of it, and some of the good aspects of it were, like when I think back on things that I did enjoy and that were really wonderful about being in that environment was, if a guy got sick, for example, you got sick and you couldn't work and you had no money coming in, the church looked after its own. The women would take meals over there, take care of all of that, help clean the house. There were many nights that not just me, we all did it. It was just, you would sign up for a list, and if someone was really sick and suffering, you would sit with them, so they were never by themselves. And there was always multiple people there, would sit with them and talk and encourage them, and the women would keep them fed. And the church, everyone would pay a little bit each month. It wasn't very much. I think it was like $20 for single people and $40 for a family, was just put into the common kitty, and that was to provide for emergencies or anything like that. So if the house payment was covered, car insurance, kept the lights on, kept the oil filled, so that the family didn't have to worry about those things. We took care of one another. We didn't rely upon any government agencies or wealth or anything like that. It was the way that things have always been done. That's the way, that may be a surprise to you, but even into the 70s and 80s, that's how communities took care of each other, especially in the rural areas. And it was also nice, if you were a young man, most of the boys got married at 18 and the girls at 17 or 18. They were usually right in there, married very young. That the church came together to give them a real good start. It was amazing. Like during the wedding, there would be the whole side of the church would be wedding gifts of all the members that were helping them get going. And it was all the things that they needed, like dining room tables, because they didn't have anything. You don't have anything when you're 18. I mean, you're lucky. You probably had a job, and back then you could actually get into a starter home. It was something that you could still do with a single income. They had themselves either a place that they rented or a small starter home, a little fixer-upper. But the church came together and got them started. They had their couch and they had TV and dishes, and it was incredible. Everything that you would need to completely kit a house. And it was a great way to get a family a start, plus cash. Like we would have before the wedding, the women would have a bridal shower where they would get together and I don't know, whatever they did. The women and the men were kept separate in most of the things like that. But before the wedding, we would have the bachelor party for the young man that was getting married. And it wasn't a bachelor party like you think of today. It was just all the men would get together, and you're talking like 1,000 or better. And the men, you would give a few bucks. And the guy might walk out of there with $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 of cash to help pad his bank account and help him get started as a new husband. And we would just hang out together and watch old hunting films, and there was donuts there, and that's just the way that it was done. The community came together to support these young kids, to get them going, to help them get a life started. And that was a real wonderful thing. And then also there were many times where most of the guys, everyone there was blue collar and either had a construction company or worked for construction or worked in some sort of a blue collar job, and they were capable men. Most everyone knew how to do something. I mean, it was just how different things are now. Like when we were 16, 17, we were all into, the boys all got their license on their birthday, and muscle cars were popular and still affordable. So all my friends had like Challengers or Cudas or Camaros or Mustangs, and we knew how to work on them. The weekends, so many weekends, guy'd blow an engine or transmission would go out. Man, there'd be 5, 6 dudes there. We'd be in a barn somewhere. We'd yank that thing out there, work all night, throw a new transmission in it, rebuild the engine, put a new cam in, whatever. That was just what we did. It was just the idea of taking it out to a mechanic or not fixing it yourself or working on it yourself was unthinkable. There were a lot of situations where maybe older folks or a widow would need, her roof is leaking, she needs a new roof. It'd be Saturday, there'd be 50 men over there showing up with your tool belt. Everyone had their tool belt. My granddad had one. My dad, of course, had one. He was a general contractor, but everyone did. You had your tool belt. And when the call came out, hey, we're going to be meeting at so-and-so's, they need a new roof, or we're going to put windows in, or their deck is rotting, we got to fix that. You grab your tool belt, you'd show up and put it on, you'd go to work. I mean, that was the way the community worked. So I have to preface the negative sides of it that I shared yesterday, and indeed that was there, but that was only half of it. I have to give credit where credit is due. And there were a lot of benefits or a lot of positive sides to that as well. So, nothing's ever black and white. There's always good and bad with everything. So I think it's important that gets across too. We have a super chat from Mr. Jason Barr. Shout out to you, Jason. Thank you for your generosity. Who says, just picked up my new G19X and I'm really digging it over the regular G19. Actually, CCW is quite nice. It is the gold standard. Yeah, it is the gold standard. And funny thing, I don't know if it's funny. Why do I keep saying that? When the group of men came together, for our individual rapid response team, what some of the guys ultimately ended up doing is most of us were kind of kitted out that way with G19s. That's kind of the gold standard. And once they realized that and they kind of saw that, and I kind of I tried to push them in that direction. They sold their stuff and then just went with that so that we're all on the same page. And I'm really happy with that. That way we can share holsters, magazines, and we're all familiar with each other. We don't have any exotics or weird stuff that's going to be confusing. I think it's important. Military doctrine has showed us that is consistency and having things simple and uniform, so it's the same. So we pick up something that's going to work here. You're not just mixing and matching. I mean, that's just a recipe for disaster. But good choice on that. You're going to fall in love with that more and more, and you're right. It does CCW very well. It is what I CCW almost 90% of the time now. Jason has another super chat. Thank you, Jason. Says, speaking of radios, if you have zero experience, I highly recommend Radio Made Easy. Evan will help you get set up, and he is not a ham snob. Well, there you go. Let's give a shout out to Radio Made Easy, one word. So if you don't know about, I don't know who he is, but I know Jason, and I trust Jason to give a solid recommendation. So I would go with that. I'm not the radio expert. Jariah is my radio expert. He takes care of those things for me. I just hand it to him. It's like, I just want it to be simple and to work. I don't want to have to learn something. I don't have it in me to learn more. I don't have any time for more hobbies or brain power for that. We have a super chat from Jared C. Shout out to you, Jared. Jared says, the vein of preparedness, or maybe the bane of preparedness, where you start as a single person. I'm looking to become more self-reliant, but don't know where to start. I guess I just kind of go back to what I said earlier. Preparedness. You got to think, I guess it's hard for me to give you advice on that because I don't know what your situation is. I don't know if you're rural or if you're urban. Do you have water on your land? Do you have firewood within reach? Trees, resources, that depends. But you have to look at, okay, where am I the most vulnerable? Well, if you want to know where you're the most vulnerable, the acid test is this. Go out into your garage and turn your main breaker off. Clunk. And spend 24 hours. And you'll find out where your vulnerabilities are. I mean, that really comes down to that. When there's no heat and there's no electricity, and if you have a well pump, there's no water or limited. You're going to have to live with what you have. You have a couple resources. You've got clean water that you can access in your toilet tanks. Now, a lot of people think that's gross, but they don't understand how a toilet works. That's clean water that comes in. And we are one of the few nations that actually has filtered water for flushing, which is insane, but that's the way we do it. Thank you, boomers. So you have some water there, 7, 8 gallons there. You've got 50 gallons or better in your hot water heater, but a gallon a day, you burn through that pretty quick, and that's just for drinking, and not even talking about washing or cleaning up or any sanitary issues like that. So the first thing you need to deal with is exposure. What if it's cold and there's no heat in my apartment? How do I deal with that? Well, you start with blankets. Do you have wool blankets? That's a good place to start. A wool blanket goes a long ways in a lot of situations, and the best place to find those are at thrift stores. Go to thrift stores, look for good wool blankets. Sometimes people will take really nice Pendletons because maybe a moth got into them or they got a little frayed edge on it or a hole in it. Don't worry about that. That's fine. If you can buy a Pendleton blanket for $20 because it's got a little moth eat on it, then that's a good way to do it. The old army blankets, those are very good, very durable. You should have a couple of those, but I'd start with that. I mean, you can wrap yourself up in those blankets and you can get by even if your apartment's really cold. An alternate heater source. Do you have a wood stove? Can you get a wood stove? Maybe you don't have the money for a wood stove. Wouldn't be a bad idea to go and find something, just kind of scour Facebook Marketplace. They come up all the time. The summer is a good time to buy that. Look for one that comes with all the chimney, because that chimney, that stainless steel chimney and all that's really expensive to buy. It's something people don't consider. Like, oh, I got a good deal on this wood stove. And then you find out the chimney pipe is usually the same cost, thousands of dollars, the same price as a wood stove. So if a wood stove is $5,000, the chimney and all of the accessories to go through is going to be $5,000 as well if you're going to have that installed. So if you can buy something that someone is selling with the chimney pipes, get that. Even if you're not ready to install it, or maybe you don't even want to install it in the home you're in because you don't know if you're going to be there permanently, have it on hand. Get a small one, have it on hand so that in an emergency, if you had to, you could set that up there and you could poke it out the window. Now remember, we're talking really extreme here, but there's resources in cities where you can get firewood. Every single house and every structure, most of them, if the older ones, are built out of wood. And they've got lots of 2x4s in the walls, and there's furniture, and there's things that can be burned. So if there's abandoned houses, or just be thinking about this. Like, if I needed to get wood to survive for a few weeks, if the power was shut off or the power was out for a long time, what would I be able to do? What would I do? I think a lot of you understand this, but most of you don't, how vulnerable our power grid is. I have a friend, let's be careful what I say here. I have a friend who works for a power company that's a major distributor up and down the West Coast. And he's part of our group. That if they needed to replace these things, even if they could in this current environment, it would be 2 years before they could get them replaced. And in that 2 years, we're talking about power being out to massive portions of states. So that's a huge vulnerability. we've had a few of these that have been going on. You know, you guys watch the news. There are more going on than that you don't know about because they're not being reported on. This is escalating, but it's highly likely that you could find yourself in a situation where you could have multiple weeks of power outage, multiple weeks, maybe even months. You think that's not true? 2 years ago, I think it was, maybe no, a year or two ago, there was a natural gas kind of a little substation. Didn't even look very big, just a small little spot. You had a few pipes coming up out of the ground. Well, just by a freak accident, a car got up, messed up or something, rolled up there and wiped out this little substation. It was a massive catastrophe. The entire city, the majority of the city across the river, was out of natural gas now. And that means hot water heaters, that means furnaces, that means your ability to cook. Most of the ranges and everything were gas. My sister was wrapped up in that. That happened to her. And it was incredible, the effort that was involved in getting that up and going. There was absolutely armies of natural gas employees working on that for a month. I mean, it was weeks and weeks to get that going and then once they finally got it open, they had to go and they had to purge gas at each individual house. And this was just one little tiny substation, and it had a catastrophic effect on the community that no one had any idea of. And these were in the good times. And this was one. So you can imagine if there was any sort of a coordinated on this sort of infrastructure, it's highly, highly likely that you will be facing this in the future. So you need to think about this now. And even with the wood stove and stuff, even if you don't do it or don't put it in, at least have it on hand. Have it on hand so in a pinch, you could set that up and you could have that, poke it out a window. Just like, I mean, we lived, and if you don't have access to this or this is just not an option for you, you know, you can live comfortably in a wall tent, a canvas wall tent, so comfortably. I know this because we did it 3 weeks a year at our deer and elk hunting camps. In austere environment of 10, 15 below zero. Warm as a bug in a rug, as my granddad used to say. Cooked in there, lived in there. Small little wood stove, about not much bigger than this. Maybe twice the size of that. You can go on Etsy. There's a bunch of guys that are making those. They're really popular with elk hunters in tents. You can get one of these canvas tents. Buy one used. I would advise not buying a green one. There's a lot of military ones out there that are green, but the green ones are very dark. I would get a white canvas tent, 10 by 12, 12 by 14, 16 by 24, you know, whatever you can find, have that on hand. That and the little wood stove, you're talking of an investment of maybe $2,000, $1,500 if you get, maybe even $1,000 if you get it used. It fits in you could put it on a pallet, and right there, man, you're covered. Set it up in your yard if you have to, but you would keep your family warm. You can heat water on that little wood stove. You should have a cord of wood on hand. A cord of wood would last you a long time. That'd get you through the winter time if you were sparing, if you're only heating one room. You know, if this was, you could cook on it, you can heat water on it. You need to have these things in place. The world is changing, and the luxury, the idea of just turning on the furnace and turning on the water and it's going to come out, that's not going to be a reality all the time. There's going to be shortages, and I don't want to be put in a camp. I don't want to be reliant upon someone else or go sit in a shelter with my family. That's just not going to happen. So you got to look at what are the three things you need. You got to cover exposure. How are you going to keep yourself and your family warm? It's a lot easier. That's why I say don't get married, young man. It's a lot easier looking after yourself than looking after little kids in a family. It's a whole different deal. So you'll have to make that decision. Once you have that in place, a water supply, how are you going to deal with water? Once your hot water heater's dry, do you even have cans? Even if there was a supply, let's say the National Guard brought a trailer out, as they typically do, with potable water in it, and you get to stand out there in line with all the other normies. Do you have a way of carrying that water? Are you going to be carrying it in saucepans back and forth? Do you have on hand a few 5-gallon jugs? You got to have these things, gentlemen. You got to have them. And then food. Do you have a larder? Do you have a pantry? Do you have any freeze-dried food? Do you have any 3 months of emergency supplies, that sort of thing. Do you have batteries, flashlights, just the basic stuff. As useless as the government is, one thing that they do have a resource that's decent. If you just want to go, you can go to the Red Cross and they have emergency preparedness lists. Gives you a place to start, things to consider. There's a lot of private ones out there. I mean, there's no shortage of YouTubers that have put out emergency supply lists. Just know the source and just get something that's reputable. And build your own. You'll know what you need. But sometimes those lists are nice because it gets you thinking in the right direction. And that's basically it. I mean, that's what you can do. Do you have gasoline? The gas stations are going to be effective. The pumps won't work if the power is out, and the gas will run out quickly and it will be consumed immediately because every person with a generator is going to converge on those gas stations with all their cans that they own, and they will drain them dry very quickly. Do you have gas for your car? My recommendation for that is if you have a car, how many gallons is the tank? You should have enough gas on hand to fill it up if it was empty. If you have a 20-gallon tank, you need 20 gallons. My big truck, my 350's got a 48-gallon tank. Should have 50 gallons on hand for that per vehicle, minimum. How long can you store fuel? About a year. Store fuel about a year. Buy non-ethanol premium fuel. You can find it. Look up. There's some sites online that will tell you the gas stations in your area that has that. Have that on hand in your cans. The best value for cans are the plastic racing jugs made by Jegs, Jegs, the last time I checked. They're about 20 bucks a piece. They're square. They have a nozzle on them. They're just old school. They don't have any of that funky EPA stuff on them. They're very stable, so they're easy to transport. They don't tip over, but have those on hand. You have to invest $100 and buy 25 gallons cans to hold 25 gallons of gas. So about, let's say $200, let's say $225, $250. You'll have that's an investment. You can have 25 gallons of water storage and 25 gallons of fuel storage. You can go on Amazon and get those or wherever. They're not that expensive. But that's what I would do. That was a long answer. Goodness. We have a super chat from Woolridge Creek. Shout out to you, Woolridge. And he says, in your decade plus on the platform, ever had a crazy viewer bother your IRL like Pure Living? No, I haven't. I've had a few people come by, but everyone's been friendly. No, not really. Not really. Hasn't been really a big concern, but it's going to happen more and more. Especially more the people are pressed and frightened. And if one of the foolish people who are still watching mainstream media and watching the news, that's very much fear-based, and it's all about getting people fearful and worked up. Everything opposed to God, which is mainstream media, is just the opposite. God says, I'm not a God of fear. Fear not. How many times does he say fear not in the Bible? Hundreds of times. The adversary, how he works, is always the opposite. And so that is always fear-based. And the more people are afraid, the more they want something that they can hang on to. And if they think that there might be comfort, or this creator might have some insight or some, they can help me in some way, I expect more and more of that to happen in the future. It's just, I get it. When we get scared, we don't know what to do. And, one thing that I used to get aggravated with that sort of thing and frustrated with people that didn't take the responsibility of being prepared serious and take care of their own stuff. And when I was working, in Colorado, I was a career structural firefighter. And if you've ever done that sort of work or been involved with it, you may think that most of your job is putting out fire, but it's actually quite rare to put out fires anymore with modern building codes. What you end up doing, and how fire departments have kept themselves relevant, which I don't even think we should have government fire departments anymore. I think it should all be privatized because of the wastes. To keep themselves relevant, they've moved into the medical field. So the majority, 9 out of 10 calls, maybe 20 out of 10 calls are going to be medical calls. And we would get calls, it was frustrating, when we were on the Kelly schedule, it was on B shift, and you just get get to sleep, and 3 o'clock in the morning, here comes a call, and someone's called, oh, my toilet is running. We load up in the engine, and 4 people and go out there and go shut off the valve, something that most people should know how to do. And we were in a situation like that, and it was an older woman, and it was a ridiculous call, and I was in the engine afterwards kind of grumbling about that. My lieutenant said something to me that really changed my life and the way that I looked at it. And he said, the reason why people call us for these, what seemed like, we used to call them BS calls. The reason why people call us is that they've reached the limit of their ability to deal with the situation. They don't have any family. We don't have community anymore. We don't have tribes anymore. We don't honor or care for our elderly anymore. There's no priority put on that. Just shove them off and forget them and leave them to themselves. What other option do they have? They've reached and they've exceeded their ability to deal with the emergency that is their personal emergency. And the only people in the world they have to call that will come and help them is the fire department. So that's all he said, but that really helped me to have a different view on that. And I never had a bad word to say after that, didn't about people that I thought were maybe calling for BS reasons, because there's exceptions, always exceptions, but for the most point, the reason why they're calling is they're out of options. They didn't know what else to do, and that's why the fire department was there. So that's the way I look at it. And you're going to see that more and more as people are stressed. They're going to be reaching out and just grasping at anything. I mean, can you imagine? If I get into trouble or get hurt, I've got a whole bunch of people on my phone that I could call that would come and help me. Even if I was 8 hours away and I broke down somewhere, or I was in a bad way, I needed someone to bail me out of jail, whatever, I have people I could call that would come and help me. And goodness, I mean, you take that for granted. That's a great comfort, great comfort to know. If you didn't have that, didn't have friend groups, and didn't have anyone to call, and you knew that you were completely on your own, I mean, just the sense of despair and desperation that could come about by that is, I'm not unsympathetic to it. That's why the community is very important. But it's going to have a way of working itself out. It's going to be necessary. We're just not going to be able to be as independent as we have been. And I used to think that was something that was a good thing, being your own island and being your own man and rugged individualism and taking care of your own problems. But that was wrong. That was a wrong way to look at it. That's an awful way to live. It's far, far better to need to rely upon one another and to understand it's this reset and this pressure, the strain that's coming upon people and thing. It has a lot of negative aspects to it, but the one positive aspect about that is it's going to force us to rely upon one another. Local communities like this are closer and more attentive towards one another, because what we all realize, as I said before, is that we might need each other. The ambulance is a long ways away. The police are a long ways away. The fire department is a long ways away. And our neighbor is a whole lot closer. And that's who we're going to need to rely upon. We just don't have the access. And so knowing that at any moment I might need my neighbor's help, it kind of forces you to make sure that you're engaged, make sure that you build those relationships, and you have their phone numbers on speed dial, so that if and when those situations come up, that you have someone to call. All right, well, gentlemen, what's our time here? I keep going over. I was going to try to keep these things in an hour and a half. Boy, I can talk. Take after my Nana. She was that way. I do appreciate everyone for being here. Thank you. May God bless you and your families. We do ask you, please keep us in your prayers. We need it. We need it. Don't be afraid. The future is going to be bright. It's going to be exciting. I think that the next 10 years is going to be challenging, but there's going to be opportunities to do things, to meet people. Opportunities maybe even for some of us to get together that The future's bright. Future's bright. Trust God. Get right with God. Remember the golden rule. Do unto the others as you would have them do unto you. Be kind. And everything's going to work out. It's going to be just fine. All right. If that's it, we're going to shut her down. Please pray for us. We pray for you constantly. May God bless you and your families. And we'll see you over on the next live stream.